He promised he was going to do to Vladimir Putin what he did to Corn Pop. He was going to beat him with a chain and destroy the Russian economy and crash the ruble. Watch.
We're cutting off Russia's largest banks in the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling.
So it would have been nice if Biden said, I'm going to get Russian troops out of Ukraine, and that'll help everybody. And everybody, including us, would have applauded. But he can't do that. So instead, he's going to destroy Russia's economy. But he couldn't do that even. It turns out the Russian economy is based on commodities. It's not based on finance. It's not like our economy. Biden's never had a real job, so he did not know the difference. But it turns out the ruble has bounced back. In fact, it's now slightly more valuable than it was on the day that Russia invaded Ukraine. The economic situation in the United States, by contrast, is deteriorating fast. Here's Joe Biden's publicist today announcing that inflation is about to get worse, and Vladimir Putin did it.
So because of the actions we've taken to address the Putin price hike, we are in a better place than we were last month. But we expect March CPI headline inflation to be extraordinarily elevated due to Putin's price hike.
Putin's price hike. So I guess the question is, how much dumb propaganda do they think we're going to believe? To think it's Putin's price hike, you'd have to be like a moron.
I am coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Tuesday morning. It's about 9:15 here. And let's talk about some news. And you saw the opening segment from Tucker Carlson tonight. And Joe Biden, that was like 4 weeks ago at the State of the Union when Joe Biden said that he's going to crush the Russian economy. Saw Pelosi and Kamala clapping. They were all happy. And where's the ruble today? Like at 80, 81? And where are the EU and the US economies today? It did not really work out the way Biden was hoping it was going to work out, did it? And Tucker Carlson finally has come to the realization that Russia is much more than a gas station masquerading as a country. Because Fox News is very, very guilty of spinning that lie for the better part of 5 years, maybe 10 years. We've been hearing from Fox News that the Russian economy is the size of Iowa or the size of Delaware or the size of Texas, and it is just a gas station masquerading as a country. And it looks like Tucker Carlson has finally come to the realization that it's much, much more, because as Tucker said, Russia has commodities and resources. And Russia runs a very fiscally responsible economy. Little debt, a lot of gold, and a lot of commodities. And I think this is becoming a big, big shock for much of the media. And I'm sure a lot of people at Fox News are kind of scratching their heads saying, what happened here? I thought that the ruble was going to be at 350 to the dollar by now. Hasn't turned out that way, has it? But you hear Jen Psaki calling it the Putin Price Hike now. So that's what we're going to call this, the Putin Price Hike. So we've had Putin meddling in the elections. It's a little windy. One sec. We've had... Okay, good. Okay, so we've had Putin meddling in the elections, Putin meddling in social media, Putin denied Hillary Clinton the presidency, Putin owns Trump, Putin's the puppet master of Trump, we have Russiagate, we have Ukrainegate, we have an all-powerful, all-knowing Putin, and now we have the Putin price hikes. It's really interesting how they view Vladimir Putin. At certain moments, he's the most powerful person in the entire world. He's omnipotent. I mean, he controls everything. He can swing American elections with $4,000 spent on Facebook ads. But on the other side of things, he's so bad, he's so incompetent that he can't run a proper media campaign. In other words, he's losing the media war, and he can't prevent social media from shutting down RT and other Russian state media. He's so incompetent that he's losing the war to Ukraine, to a clown, comedian, actor who wears high heels. He's so incompetent that this comedian actor is about to march onto Moscow and defeat his army. and we have two different versions of Putin. Which one is it? Is he the all-powerful, all-knowing person who is single-handedly increasing the prices in the United States of America and in the EU? Or is he the incompetent Russian president who is getting beaten on the battlefield in Ukraine by the comedian, clown, actor, puppet, Zelensky? So, yeah, the Putin price hikes, everybody. Once again, they're spinning their lies, because about a year ago, 2 years ago, the economy was in a big mess, and we had the first wave of inflation and a lot of unemployment because of the coup. That's what they were telling us, that the economic misery we were experiencing was because of the coup, this pandemic. It had nothing to do with the decisions our leaders made by locking down our economy. That wasn't the reason that we had an economic crisis for the better part of 2 years. It had nothing to do with their decisions. It had to do with the coup. And now we have runaway inflation, and it's going to get a lot worse. We have food shortages. We're going to have energy shortages because of Putin. It has nothing to do with the decision Western leaders are making. It has to do with Putin. Make no mistake about it. What the collective West's economy is going to go through has very, very little to do with the war in Ukraine. And it has everything to do with the decision leaders in the collective West made by trying to place sanctions on a G20 commodities superpower like Russia. Because in their arrogance, as you heard Biden speaking, in their arrogance, they thought that they would be able to bring down the Russian economy. And they failed. They failed miserably, spectacularly. Some people may say they failed on purpose in order to push the Great Reset. Others may say they failed because they're incompetent. Who knows? But they are failing, and they are losing the economic war. There is no doubt about it. The ruble is at 80, 81. And if Russia was losing the war in Ukraine, do you think the ruble would be at 80 or 81 to the dollar? I don't think so. I think the ruble would be at like 200, 250 to the dollar, because the markets would be signaling that Moscow's about to collapse, that the Kremlin's going to collapse. And we're going to have a whole lot of instability in Russia. But I think the markets and the people that watch the markets are saying, nah, Russia's got this. We're going to see more stability in Russia once they clean out the clown actor, and the ruble's going to get stronger. Those are just my thoughts. And even OPEC came out with a statement, and the leader of OPEC told the European Union that there are no other options outside of Russian oil. That's what he said. He told the EU, stop this nonsense about banning Russian oil imports. All you're going to do is you're going to lead your countries into a catastrophe. Those were his exact words, a catastrophe. That's what the OPEC leader said. And I think the OPEC leader knows what he's talking about. But will the EU listen? I don't think so, because you had the Austrian chancellor who was in Moscow yesterday. And in the video I did yesterday, I said that the Austrian chancellor is probably going to be going to Moscow to either figure out a way to sweet talk, to fool the Russians into agreeing to some sort of Minsk III, because the European Union leaders, they see the writing on the wall, they see that the Zelensky regime is going to buckle. They know what's happening, so they rushed off the Chancellor of Austria, let me sit down here, to Moscow to try and pull a fast one on the Russians and get them to agree to a Minsk III type of deal. Or, and this is what I said in my video yesterday, I said, or he is going to go there to deliver some sort of warning or ultimatum to the Russians. And what did we get with this meeting? It was a short meeting, and how did it end? It ended with the Austrian Chancellor coming out and saying the meeting went very, very bad. Very bad. And let me get you his statements. That's why I wanted to sit down, because I wanted to pull out my phone and I wanted to read to you what the Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer said. He walked away from the meeting on Monday with Putin, convinced that sanctions aren't weakening the Kremlin's determination to resolve the Donbass crisis before ending the military offensive in Ukraine. What does that mean? That means that Nehammer understands that everything they've thrown at Russia, all the sanctions, 5,000 individual sanctions have been placed on Russia, like the most in history by a long shot, like a big difference in the amount of sanctions they've placed on Russia compared to, say, Iran or Syria or North Korea. Despite all the sanctions they've placed on Russia, Nehammer, the Austrian Chancellor, came away from that meeting understanding that the Kremlin's resolve is harder and more determined than ever. This is what he said. This is what Nehammer told reporters after the meeting with Putin. He said, quote, he clearly confirmed that the sanctions are tough for Russia, but the situation in Donbass, as he said, must be, so to say, resolved, despite the sanctions, even if they are quite tangible. That is what Nehammer said. Nehammer also said that Putin sees the war as necessary to defend Russian national security and mistrusts an international community that he considers one-sided. That's another quote from Nehammer. Nehammer claimed that it was a visit of friendship, but he also said that the meeting was direct, open, and hard. He also told Putin that alleged war crimes in Ukraine must be investigated to ensure the perpetrators are brought to justice, which is what Russia asked of the UN Security Council twice. And what did the UK do? They blocked that request. So I don't know what he means by an investigation. Russia's been asking for an investigation. Nehammer also said that, he said, I generally have no optimistic impression that I can report to you from this conversation with President Putin. He also delivered a warning and told Putin that the EU is more united than ever and more sanctions are on the way. So he sent Putin a warning. So that was the Austrian Chancellor and his meeting in Moscow, his impressions of the meeting in Moscow. What do you get from those quotes? I think it's real simple to understand what happened. Like I said, he went there to sweet talk, to con, to pull a fast one on Russia, to try and get a Minsk III. And when Putin said "niet" to all of the games that the Chancellor was playing, including energy, I'm sure he tried to pull a fast one with energy and the gas, because remember, Austria gets, I believe it's 80% of their gas from Russia. So I'm sure that the Austrian Chancellor tried to figure out a way to say, you know what, can we get around this gas for rubles policy that you put in place so we can save face as European leaders? I'm sure he tried to do that as well, but he tried all of these tricks, and the Kremlin said, no, these are our demands. You know our demands. We don't even need to say our demands. You know our demands. I'll put money on it that the Kremlin even told them, not only does the comedian clown actor have to recognize Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, but he has to also recognize Mariupol and Kherson and all of the south as well, because Russia's not leaving those areas. I see videos every day. Russian flags are going up on all the buildings every single day. Russia's not leaving those areas, so I'm sure he put that request to the Austrian chancellor as well. But anyway, long story short, Putin didn't budge, the Kremlin didn't budge, and the Austrian chancellor then decided to throw some warnings at the Russian leadership by saying the EU is more united than ever, and we're going to place more sanctions on you, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure that Putin looked at him and said, okay, yeah, sanctions are kind of, they're tough, but we're going to get by. That's pretty much the statement that Nehammer is saying. When you read into his quote, pretty much the Russians said, yeah, sanctions, they're inconvenient and they're giving us a hard time for the time being, but we're going to be okay because the ruble is strong. We have commodities, and you guys need commodities. What we need to sell, the world needs to buy, and we're going to take rubles for that. And we have China at our back. So I'm sure that the Austrian chancellor left frustrated. I'm sure that he left a broken man, and I'm sure that he left a smaller man, because he probably went into that meeting thinking that, we're the big bad European Union, and now we're going to go to the Russians and we're going to dictate our terms. And he came out with nothing, nada. The Russians are. I will say this. I always wondered: is Putin is he going to be a little softer to Europe? Is he going to try to find an accommodation? Nope. No chance. And when you look at Lavrov's statements, Lavrov made some big statements yesterday, especially with regard to Borrell. Borrell, the foreign minister of the EU, was saying that the only solution to what's going on in Ukraine is a military solution. And, well, Lavrov said, you want a military solution? We'll give you a military solution. And he just laid into Borrell in his statements that he made yesterday. Quote, Western propaganda shifted gear into depicting Russia as pure evil and Ukraine as pure good. The current Ukrainian regime is presumably a beacon of democracy, justice, freedom that is drawn to everything European, to the values that Europe claims it always adhered to. Lavrov said, quote, neither is true. Ukraine is a hotbed of radical nationalism, while Western powers easily break any norms when it fits them, while telling others to comply. Kosovo can be recognized as independent without a referendum. Crimea cannot, despite holding a referendum, observed by many, many international monitors. In Iraq, 10,000 kilometers away from the U.S., they imagined some threat of their national security. They bombed it, found no threat, and didn't even say they were sorry. But when right at our border, they grow neo-Nazi ultra-radicals, create dozens of biolabs, working on bioweapons, as documents prove, we are told we are not allowed to react to those threats. I had to read you that entire quote from Lavrov because, wow. While we're on the subject of biolabs and chemicals, there was the incident yesterday where, and get this is rich. This is rich. Azov, Nazi Azov fighters who are stuck in the factory in Mariupol are claiming that the Russians unleashed a chemical attack. So now we're going to believe Azov NAZIs. I have to get you the quote. Let me find the quote here. An unidentified chemical agent was dropped from a drone on Monday, leaving several Ukrainian fighters in the area struggling to breathe, according to unverified accusations posted on Telegram by the Azov battalion. And according to this post, 4 Azov battalion guys, I think it's 4. One sec. Yeah, 4 Azov battalion guys who are stuck in this factory are suffering from mild respiratory issues, dizziness, and headaches. I think it's 4. Somewhere in the article I read 4 or half a dozen or something like that. Anyway, a few of them, let's just leave it at that. A few of them are suffering from mild respiratory issues, dizziness, and headaches. I don't know, maybe they caught the coof. Maybe they've been infected with the coof. Maybe we should send Dr. Fauci in there to deal with them. I don't know. Maybe we should send the Pfizer CEO to give them a booster. Have they had their fourth booster, these Azov guys? The symptoms sound like the coof. So yeah, that's we're supposed to believe that this is the chemical incident. Of course, the galactically dumb Liz Truss, the foreign minister of the UK, an embarrassment for the United Kingdom, came out with a statement, and she said, "We are working urgently with partners to verify the details. Any use of such weapons would be a callous escalation in this conflict, and we will hold Putin and his regime to account." So that's Liz Truss coming to the aid of these poor Azov NAZI fighters trapped in this steel factory, who are probably holding, if they haven't offed them already, if they haven't deleted these guys already, who are probably holding a bunch of NATO commanders hostage, most notably French commanders, who, if the word got out that they were stuck in Mariupol and training NAZIs, well, that would not look so good for Macron during the election. By the way, the Russians also took out one of the top NAZI head honchos in Ukraine the other day. They took out, this guy's name is Taras Bobanich, and they liquidated this guy. He was actually one of the leaders of the Right Sector, another NAZI group. The Right Sector is also led by Dmitry Yarosh, who is supposedly one of the people who's floating around Zelensky in Kiev. He's one of the people liaising with Nuland and ordering Zelensky around. The Right Sector is his organization. And it looks like they took out one of the top-level guys in the Right Sector. They took him out in an operation 5 kilometers south of Izium city. So he's been taken out, denazified. And while we're on the subject of NAZIs and the fact that you have a bunch of French, possibly German, maybe Turkish, maybe Swedish, maybe Dutch, definitely English, maybe American, who knows, that you have all these NAZIs trapped in Mariupol or being held hostage in Mariupol. NATO, not NAZIs, you have a whole bunch of NATO commanders trapped by NAZIs in Mariupol. While we're on that subject, let's talk about the revelation that Justin Trudeau was training Azov guys. So we have this news, which is saying that Canada's military has reportedly provided combat training to members of Ukraine's Azov regiment, Nazi Azov regiment. Contrary to stated policy and despite previous denials of any official relations between Ottawa and the notorious militia, the apparent connection came to light in photos posted on social media by the Ukrainian National Guard, according to a report on Monday by Radio Canada. The pictures show soldiers wearing Azov battalion patches on their uniforms while participating in training with Canadian forces. According to Alexei Kuzmenko, a journalist specializing in the Ukrainian far right, the presence of these patches strongly suggests that the Azov regiment had access to Canadian military training, Radio Canada said in its report. The patches display a crest that is firmly and exclusively associated with the Azov regiment, Kuzmenko told the media outlet. I'll put the photos up there for everyone to see. And isn't that interesting that the Freeland Trudeau government, well, Freeland, we already know who her family was. We already know what Freeman's family was all about. But isn't it interesting that you have the Freeland Trudeau government who just, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago were disgusted at the fact that they saw a flag flying during the Freedom Convoy protests, and they called millions of Canadians NAZIs. They branded millions of Canadians as NAZIs. In Parliament, they actually called Canadians NAZIs, Canadian citizens. This was just a month and a half ago that the Trudeau government was branding these people, these disgusting names, Now you have a report showing that the Trudeau government, the Freeland government of Canada, was training Azov and AZI battalions. Where's the outrage now from Trudeau? Where's the opposition party in Canada to expose this? I'm very, very curious if the Canadian opposition parties are going to lay into Trudeau for the fact that he's been busted training NAZI battalions. He was upset at one flag that allegedly appeared during one of the protests. I believe it was in Ottawa during the Freedom Convoy protests. One flag, and the entire Trudeau government flipped out and they labeled millions of Canadians as far-right and NAZI extremists. And here you have the Canadian government training an entire Azov battalion. And we've got the photographic evidence. So yeah, anyway, that's the Trudeau hypocrisy right there. The Trudeau Freeland government. So yeah, I will leave the video there. We covered a lot of ground. I'm walking in the streets of Cyprus. This is the downtown center of Cyprus. And yeah, it's a sunny day, but it's warm in the sun, but cold in the shade. So anyway, I will leave the video there, guys. theduran.locals.com. Check out Alexander's channel. He's doing all kinds of really, really good deep dive, fantastic, probably the best deep dive analysis as to what's going on in Ukraine. And of course, the Duran, where we're doing great videos and live shows all week. So check out our other channels. And once again, theduran.locals.com. Take care.